All right, Nick, let's talk about the Florida State Seminoles. A lot of change this offseason. I think we're going to see some big jumps for Florida State having a down year last year. I think they're going to bounce back in a big way. And there's a couple of key things, a couple of new additions to this team that I think they're very excited about that are going to help out in a lot more ways than people are expecting. I think Florida State fans are going to love this one. But before we dive into all that, I'm Andrew, that's Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, some big time changes, some big time additions, but some guys that are going to be more familiar and be able to help out this team in more quickly in a bigger way than people are expecting. And that's because there are guys on this team that have been added that already have experience in the Malzahn system. They're very familiar with it because they were able to move over from that world. And we're talking out none other than tight end Randy Pittman, a guy that's really already exciting a lot of people here. Let's get into the article. We can see the data on the other side. So this over from SI.com. It says there are only 3 players on Florida State's roster with at least 1 year of experience in Malzahn's offense. Redshirt senior offensive lineman Adrian Medley, senior quarterback Tommy Castellanos, great that he has experience as well, and junior tight end Randy Pittman. Pittman's experience and physicality are 2 traits tight end coach Chris Thompson is excited about to add to his room. He says, I joke with Randy, he needs to be a coach. I said it jokingly, but really, he knows Coach Malzahn's system very well, Thompson said. On Tuesday, he knows it schematically, but he knows it fundamentally as well. What Coach Malzahn's looking for, his knowledge of that's really good because he can give that to the guys. It goes on to say the guy's a physical player. He brings a lot of energy and a lot of leadership, and we're excited about what he can do. But not only is his past experience good, what he has done this offseason has also been very impressive. And this is Thompson on Pittman's new added size. I'd say probably he added 10 to 15 pounds. He's not a really tall guy, but he's got enough bulk about him right now to handle himself as a blocker really well. Thompson said he's physical. He'll put his hat in there, and he brings explosiveness that you need to block well. And I'm excited about that. So I think that's some really great news at the tight end position as well. So talking about the tight end position, how big of a difference could this make from this year to last year? Let's take a look at our graph, comparing, contrasting the top tight end at Florida State last year versus what Randy Pittman did last year going into it. See receiving yards right off, see a huge jump here. Might not look it because of the scale here, but 416 is a lot more receiving yards than 173. So Randy Pittman Jr., a big time upgrade in the receiving department. This guy can catch some balls and really add a lot offensively to this team at the tight end position. Then you see touchdowns. He does have 2 touchdowns. Landon Thomas, tight end from last year, had 1 touchdown. So not a huge jump here, but still, he was able to get 1 more touchdown than Landon Thomas last year. But I think the thing here that is very interesting to me is when you look at the blocking, he is a better blocker when we're talking about last year. Run blocking, neither of them were great. 54.9 for Pittman, 40 run blocking grade for Thomas versus pass blocking. Both of them were pretty good. 72.7, a little higher for Pittman, then a 71.4 for Thomas. But remember, we go back to that article and think about what they were talking about. This is a guy in Pittman that added 10 to 15 pounds of muscle onto his frame. This guy got a lot bigger over the offseason, looking really, really good. And the coaches talked about his explosiveness and his blocking ability already. So I expect to see even better blocking grades for Pittman this year. So what does this all mean? This means that 2 guys familiar with the system, I love. There's already connection between Castellanos and Pittman, 2 guys that are both very familiar with a similar offensive system. They're going to come in. Pittman is an upgrade at the tight end position. I look to see there be a bigger focus on the tight end position in the field this year. I think Pittman's going to be a big time addition. So someone who could have been a transfer came in at the tight end position. The people think maybe it wasn't going to be that big of a deal. I'm saying keep your eyes on Randy Pittman Jr. I think this guy's going to be a stud. I think early on he's going to be a big time weapon for this Florida State team and be able to add a lot to this offense. All right, Nick, that's enough from me. I'm curious what your thoughts are on all of this. But before we get to you, Florida State fans, in the comment section below, and this is an interesting one for me, probably my ignorance a little bit, but I just can't think of anyone off the top of my head. I'm curious, who's the best Florida State Seminoles tight end of all time? There's probably some really easy ones that I'm just like mentally blocking out right now. So let me know in the comments section below who's the easy one that I missed. Who's the best Florida State tight end, in your opinion, of all time in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what are your thoughts here for the Seminoles?
Yeah, I think there's a guy with an Irish last name that has my first name that may be at the top of the list, but I'm a little recency biased, so we'll see what the people put in the comment section below. But I think when you look at Florida State and people look at the improvement they've made in terms of how they've gotten better through the transfer portal, some freshmen as well, and obviously some guys interdevelopmentally in terms of Mike Novell's program, people forget that they're about to make a big leap this year, just statistically on paper. Now, we'll have to see how much that is when it comes to wins and losses and things like that. But if you just look at the data and you highlighted just the massive leap in the tight end improvement, that's huge by itself. You just got a lot better at one position and you start piecing together getting a lot better at a lot of positions and suddenly you get a lot better as a team. It makes sense. But let's look at quarterback as an example of this. So I pulled up the PFF grades from Florida State last year. It's pretty bad, of course, but they only won 2 games. You guys don't need me to remind you of that too much. 2-10 with a passing grade of 61.7 to be exact, right? So they won 2 games with that grade. But if you look at Tommy Castellanos last year, his passing grade was 75, roughly about 74.8 according to PFF. So if you look at that improvement, if Castellanos can come to Florida State and get that exact same level of performance, by the way, I think he'd be a little bit better potentially based on the environment and how he feels and how comfortable he seems to be. But let's just say he gets into the mid to high 70s, right? And just stops there. That's what he was last year. That's what he is with Florida State. That alone basically puts the Florida State the passing game alone, at the same level of NC State that won 6 games last year, right? So we're talking about a Florida State team that on paper should automatically get to 6 wins. Now, look, I know it's not guaranteed, and I know a lot of FSU fans are going to be like, I don't care about 6 wins. We're supposed to be a national title contending blue blood. I get all that. And that may still happen this year. But we just look at the improvement across the board, whether it's at tight end, quarterback, and about half dozen other positions on offense, when it's about a half dozen positions on defense. This is a total team rebuild that got incrementally better pretty much everywhere. We're talking 10, 15, 20 points if you look at the PFF scale. In that 10, 15, 20 point scale, in terms of every position, you add all that up, special things can happen. If you look at overall grades last year as a great example of this, so Florida State finished with a 70 grade last year, again, in quarter PFF. If they put together, let's say, a 15 point, just sort of incremental boost, they're all the way up to Syracuse and Clemson that won 10 games, right? This is what happens if you get better here and better there and better at quarterback and better up front and better scheme, right? People get caught up in individual stories, individual transfers, individual freshmen, but you have to add everything up. You have to aggregate. And if you put everything together, combine it all, and what you spit out is 10, 15 points better. Again, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Suddenly you get a team that goes from 2-10 to 10-2. Now, I'm not guaranteeing that. I'm not even predicting that for Florida State. There's a lot of question marks on this team. Of course, this is a huge year for Norvell and this entire program, but I think a lot of people are sleeping on FSU a little bit. I think they're a lot better than people give them credit for just because they got better and significantly so at so many positions. One of the things that can happen in the media is you get a lot of recency bias. You see a team that won 12 games last year and you just think, oh, they'll win 12 games this year. They were great last year. Yeah, but if they got worse at every other position, then they're not going to be 12 games. They're not going to win 12 games. They could go 4-8, right? That's what happens when teams have these radical shifts. As they were a really good team, they had a lot of really good players, and then a dozen of them left. They got drafted or transferred or whatever. And the guys that replaced them, all of them are about 10 points worse. And suddenly, as a team, you're 20 points worse, right? That happens all the time. Florida State, like a lot of other teams that are trying to get on the upswing, they get better in a lot of other positions at the same time. They get 10 points, 15 points better in all these positions. You add it up, and suddenly they're better as a team, 15 to 20 points, and they go from 2-10 to 10-2, right? That's a very realistic possibility for Florida State. Now, again, they have to execute. Coaching staff has to get these players ready. The players have to get the job done. Norvell's got to lead the charge. Castellanos has to put his money where his mouth is. And look, we've seen Mike Norvell do a great job in recruiting. They're in the media again. There's a little bit of buzz in Tallahassee. All that is good. As we get deeper into fall camp and then into the regular season, we're going to see this Florida State squad, I think, surprise a lot of people because they're a lot more talented than people think.
Yeah, Nick. And there's something you say, and you bring up some numbers. And I think that's a really good point here, but I want to quantify it in a different way just to people can wrap their heads around it. If you look at last year where Florida State ranked in their overall grade, you said 69.6 is where they're at. It was 119th in the country.
Yeah.
If they get, like you said, just incrementally a little bit like 10, 15 points better overall, that gives them up into the 40s. That's a huge jump. People think, oh, well, this is a team that's like right on the cusp. I know it seems far away. There's not much more different. You need like 3, 4 more points better, and you're bouncing in top 25 category now. This is a team that, because of the improvements they made, at worst, this is a team that's going to basically double where they were last year. They're going to, go up a lot. So I think this is a team we're going to see significant improvement. We've been talking about it a lot. Go back and check out our other videos. There's been a lot of really good stuff they've been doing in the recruiting game. I think a lot of it's going to help now. These transfers, specifically the three guys that are familiar with the system, Castellanos, Pittman, and the offensive lineman as well, is going to be a big deal. This is going to be a team that's doing some really good stuff. Norvell had a great class this year as well, but you can see the future as well. This is a team that's been doing a lot of good future stuff. So, maybe they're only in, that 44, 45 spot this year. That's still a pretty big jump up. That's a good season. It's way better than it was last year. But if you can see they've got even better in their recruiting classes for 2026 and so on, this is going to be a team that is on the trajectory of, I don't know if they're going to be, national championship contender, like serious national championship contender this year. Could be if Castellanos plays out the way that people are thinking he is. There's a very honest chance they could be. But if they're not, they're at least on the trajectory of make a huge jump this year, make another huge jump next year. And I think we're going to see Florida State back on top much sooner than people are giving them credit.